Have you ever had a brilliant idea for a Sims 4 build so crystal clear in your mind? You can see all the tiny details and the cozy nooks and the personality just oozing out of the walls. But then you sit down to actually build it, and well, what appears on the screen? Yeah, not that. Well, that's exactly what's happening to me here. And honestly, it continues to happen for quite a while. So here's the thing, I wanted this house to tell the story of a fairy who left her home in the Enchanted Woods to be with someone that she loved. And as this build developed, I began thinking maybe she fell in love with a member of the merfolk. And now here she is living on the shore. She's making something gentle and beautiful and new, all of her own. So as things progress, it does start to get better, and you'll see that this build becomes full of little personal touches, maybe some shells and some other little precious things that she's found as she walks along the beach. By the way, if you're enjoying this build so far, please feel free to tap the like and subscribe button. It really helps me continue to make magical little worlds like this one. And as a thank you for subscribing, here's a picture of a dog wearing sunglasses. And can I just say, how beautiful is this lot? I spent a little while trying to choose the perfect space for our fairy because I think she would have been quite choosy about where she lived as well. You know, she's made this big journey. She wants to make sure that she settles somewhere that feels right for her. And eventually I settled on this private island lot because I just thought, firstly, it's so beautiful. This world in general is just a really, really lovely one. And secondly, I just thought it was such a romantic idea that these two have their own little island. And when I was looking at the neighborhoods, I was looking at the neighborhood of Pelham. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I butchered that. But the description of this neighborhood says, nature rules this island from the active volcano to the flowing waterfall and down into the depths of the secluded cave. This remote destination in the Sulani Island chain is the place for exploring the beauty of nature. And I just thought, how perfect is that our fairy could be enchanted by nature in this home away from home. So those are the reasons I chose this lot, and let me tell you, I did not regret it for a moment. When this house was finished, I was just so happy with how it looks and how it settles into its landscape. So our little fairy, she was just living her life in Inniscreen. She was rooted there. That was her home, deep in the magical enchanted forest. But then she met someone, perhaps a merman from the warm turquoise waters of Sulani, and maybe he doesn't understand the forest magic and she doesn't understand the coastal tides, but they're curious about each other's worlds and they make each other laugh. So one day I imagine this brave little fairy packed up all her things in her little satchel or whatever she has, and she moves across the world. And this build, this fairy beach house, this is what she makes in that new place. And if I could just share a little personal moment with you, this story is a little bit mine too. I moved from the UK to the USA to be with the person I love, just like this little fairy did. And I brought bits of my old life back with me. I brought little knickknacks, my favorite egg cups, a little teapot, way too many scarves for the Arizona heat. And I've spent the last few years weaving those things into a new life here. And maybe you've done something like that too. Maybe if not for love, then for a dream or just for yourself. And if you haven't, I think many of us know the feeling of carrying a little bit of home inside of us, trying to build something new that still feels like you. So this is what this fairy house is about. I imagine it as a little bit sparkly and a little bit salty, but 100% full of heart. Now, of course, once you have this magical, wonderful idea in your head, the next challenge is actually building it. Because here's the thing, anyone who met our fairy and our merman could not deny that these two are soulmates. However, the same thing could not be said of Island Living and Enchanted by Nature. Island Living, it gives breezy and it gives sun-bleached wood and it gives open-air patios, while Enchanted by Nature, it gives mossy and it gives mushroom and it gives carved fireplaces. They're not exactly designed soulmates. So the question becomes, how do I bring these two worlds together? How do I recreate this in The Sims? I can just imagine our little fairy walking into this new space and bringing pieces of home with her. Maybe her favorite enchanted mirror or a slightly needy houseplant. but she also lets the sea influence her. So there is a lot of island living woven into this fairy home. I tried to blend them in a way that felt intentional. I didn't want it to feel like I just plopped a fairy house down on the beach, you know? I wanted it to feel like it was meant to be. In real life as well, I feel like the best buildings feel like they are meant to be in that exact space. They blend with their landscape so perfectly that it would be hard to imagine that spot without that building. That's what I'm trying my best to do here. I tried to stick mostly to those two packs, and I didn't manage it completely because, like I say, they are very different. So I did pull in the odd piece here and there from other packs, mostly cottage living. I don't know about you, but I just think Enchanted by Nature and cottage living go together so well. I started with the bones of a classic beach cottage, and then I gave it this salt box roof. Now, of course, salt box roofs can be found absolutely anywhere, but when I think of them, I always think of that kind of Massachusetts, New England kind of style. And it's actually quite funny. When I was reading about these salt box roofs, my understanding is the reason they're used so much in those northern states is because they were so good for the climate there. Climates with snowfall and heavy rain. They have no flat parts and they can endure strong winds. So obviously not really necessary on the island of Sulani. However, I think still a great way to bring the beach style to Sulani in a new way. And also you'll see a little bit later, it allowed me to include quite a decent sized lofted bedroom. So I was quite happy with it in the end. You'll see that unlike typical salt box roofs, which come to more of a point, with this one, I kind of rounded the top of the roof to make it feel more organic, give it those cottagecore, fairycore vibes that we have in a lot of the builds in Inner Screen, as a little nod to her heritage and her homeland. I did have dreams in that smaller bump out to the left there, just in front of the greenhouse area, that we would have a little book nook, a little window seat maybe. She could sit in that nook and read and look out over the ocean, and I just thought that would be really beautiful, but I could not get it right with the roofs and the balcony and the way that would join. So while I do still like the idea of that, I did get rid of it, and I think it was the right choice because it didn't quite look right, and we do have a lot of other cozy nooks in this house. I created this nice little porch area kind of just to signify where the main entrance was. I feel like every house needs an entrance with some kind of personality, something to draw you in. So that's what I was trying to create here. Just a little intrigue as you go up and you go in this almost tunnel-like entrance. And then of course, when you go through, you're immediately greeted by this wonderful ocean view. It's just so stunning. I know I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love this lot. So you've got that shingle siding that you see quite often in Cape Cod houses or maybe Cannon Beach because it's so practical and it's so resilient to that sea air. But the great thing about this shingle siding is that it's actually from the Enchanted by Nature pack. So I just thought that was an absolute gift when it came to combining the two styles. To tie it in a bit more with the Sulani vibes, I put on it a thatched roof type. And I think that looks really, really good. One of the most challenging parts of this build was choosing the right windows. I must have gone back and forth 100 times. And I think the struggle was that Enchanted by Nature windows and doors, they're very wibbly wobbly and organic, and some of them have moss covering them and they are beautiful. While Island Living is the exact opposite. It's very simple and clean lines and wide open for letting in the sea breeze, and those are gorgeous too. But I wanted something that would kind of bridge the gap, not lean too far one way or the other. So you'll see most of the windows and the doors actually that I include in this build are in fact base game. And then I just include the occasional feature window from one pack or the other. And in the end, I think that works really well. I think just having one or two of something in this case really allowed those items to have a moment and to really shine. I used just some placeholder furniture to kind of map out a floor plan. So a lot of this furniture does change. I was just trying to really figure out how the space would work and where things would go. I am so happy though that I found a place for the Enchanted by Nature glass wallpaper. So if you haven't seen that before, that isn't actually a window. That is in fact a wallpaper, and it shows on both sides, just like you would expect a window to be. TV, it appears just like a window, but you'll find it in the wallpaper category. There was a new base game update recently where we got a lot of different styles of these glass wallpaper. And like I say, I was just so happy I found a space for it off to the side here. This area becomes a little greenhouse space, and I imagine that she uses some fairy magic to create almost a different climate in this room so that she can grow some of the plants she loves from back home in the Enchanted Forest. Because maybe if they were out on the patio or something like that, the sea breeze wouldn't be good for them and they wouldn't thrive. So this is a little space where she can create a home away from home. You'll see I did create another little bump out area off to the right of the house here as we're looking at it. Similar in size and shape to the one that we had on the left where the greenhouse area is going to be. And one really happy accident. When you're looking at this house from the top down, these two little bump outs, they almost look like flippers, like animal flippers or fins, almost like if you were looking down on a dolphin or a whale or something like that, you'd see the fin off to the side. And I just thought, what a happy accident. I love it when these things come together and I don't really even have to think about it. So here's a question. Do you think fairies actually like the ocean, or is this one just making a grand exception for love? Let me know what you think in the comment section. Now this color scheme in the living room, this wonderful soft green, blushy orange color scheme, this is where it all kind of felt like it started to make sense. I felt her energy so strongly in this room. It gave me beach vibes with a fairy flourish. I was really pleased with the way those little fairy lights looked and how they were kind of hanging over the open void that would look up to the lofted bedroom area. You'll see she's got some beloved houseplants. She's got a journal. I definitely feel like she would journal, and that's a way that she relaxes and passes the time. And then I had such a nightmare with these curtains. I had dreams that when you opened these windows in our imagination, the sea breeze would rush in and these lovely curtains would just wave in the wind like a romantic movie or something like that. But I just could not get them to sit properly over the windows. They wanted to go up high. And even when I had move objects on and I tried to lower them down with the 0 key, they would not go. And to be honest, this isn't the only struggle I had with curtains throughout this entire build. I don't know why, but curtains just give me so many problems in this game. So unfortunately, my dream of curtains waving in the wind did not come to fruition here. However, we do get some in later, thank goodness. So overall, I'm happy with it. Over to the side here, I thought this little curved corner would be the perfect dining nook. So I placed down this cute little table and combined it with these new Enchanted by Nature dining chairs, which are a little bit flamboyant for a beach house, I will give you that, but I think that the color scheme ties in perfectly with other things that we have around. I also thought this would be a good opportunity for us to bust out the Enchanted by Nature lighting as well. I must have sat and looked at this little kitchen for probably about 10 minutes before I started to go in and play around with how things should go. And I think the reason is, well, there's many reasons. Partly it's kind of awkward there under the stairs. I love how it looks, don't get me wrong, but we are then limited as to what we can do on those surfaces in gameplay. I did make up for it by having the island living counters. I think that color is just so beachy and just the right vibes for our fairy. However, one challenge with using these counters is that they don't come with the matching upper counters. I have no idea why we don't have those. But actually, in this particular instance, I think it worked out okay because it forced me to think differently. And I went for open shelving, and you'll see I cluttered it up with all these different little treasures, all these little personalized moments, seashells that she's found on the beach, a few little knickknacks that have personal significance to her, maybe they're gifts from her merman boyfriend. I think I managed to unlock the plan of this kitchen when I moved the window from the center to the outside. That just allowed me to have the stove in a place that made more sense, the sink in a place that made more sense, and the functionality of this kitchen work a whole lot better. None of the base game or the Enchanted by Nature or the island living appliances looked right. I'm not even sure if we have island living appliances now I think of it, but this is one occasion where I had to branch out into the cottage living expansion pack, and I'm glad I did because I do think that these appliances are perfect for this space. I think one of the things that I was trying to reconcile in my head before before we started was when you think of fairy cottage, you maybe think separate spaces, maybe a separate kitchen, dining, living, like that more traditional floor plan. And when I think of a beach house, I think very much open plan, open living. But I think what we were able to do quite successfully here was create separation within a larger open space. That's what I was going for anyway. Let me know what you think. I found some of these spellcaster books in Debug and I thought maybe she'd collected some human recipes. One interesting fact about our fairies is that they don't have a hunger need, so a kitchen isn't really necessary. However, I don't like to build a house that isn't functional. It doesn't have all the main pieces that you would expect from a functional home. Just in case maybe in your own gameplay you don't want a fairy to live here, you think actually this would be perfect for a human sim instead, then you can still use it for other storylines as well. Plus, I do see her as a good fairy, so I think that she would enjoy cooking for others, and that's how she can show love, even though she doesn't benefit from that directly herself. So that's the vibes I was going for here. This build was never meant to be just a beach house. I really wanted it to feel like a love story, a place that holds the magic not only of actually falling in love, but making a home somewhere new. So that's what we're going for here. It's soft, it's quirky. This kitchen, maybe it is pretty decorative a lot of the time, but it does still have some use and purpose as well. It's full of character, and to me, I think that character is where the real romance lives. You may have noticed that I included quite a lot of seating in this house considering it's just for one person, but I imagine our fairy, she has a really good heart, she's a really kind person, and consequently she has quite a lot of friends. I can just imagine her fairy friends coming from the Enchanted Forest to visit her, maybe some mer friends pop by occasionally, maybe she's made some new friends on the island of Sulani. So even though she lives alone here, I do not see this as a lonely house at all. I see this house as full of warmth and friendship and love, and so I created lots of hangout areas where she could just chill with other Sims. Here you can see I'm just spending some time decorating the greenhouse. My inspiration for this little greenhouse was, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Practical Magic. It's quite old now. I want to say it came out in the 90s maybe, but it had Sandra Bullock and it had Nicole Kidman, and they were two sisters and they were both witches, and it was set in this really lovely house that had this beautiful kind of conservatory greenhouse area out the back where they would grow herbs and plants and maybe things that could be used for magic but you couldn't prove it, that kind of thing. So that's what I was trying to go for here. I tried to clutter it up as much as I could with pots and seeds and plants and gardening tools while still allowing it to be functional so you can use this space if you want to. And as I say, I just love the idea that she uses some kind of fairy magic to create a climate in this greenhouse that allows these plants from the Enchanted Forest to grow and thrive. Now, when I was building this second pier area, I suppose, the second balcony area or platform area, when I was doing this was when I had the idea that maybe her lover, her boyfriend, whatever you want to call him, that he was a merman. Because I could just imagine her after a wonderful day of tending to the plants and reading books and living this soft life. She comes out here with a drink for herself and one for him, and she sits on her sunbed and she looks out at the ocean and she waits for him to come and join her at the end of the day. And I just thought that was so lovely and romantic that they have this special time of the day, probably in the evening, that they dedicate just to each other. I had the brilliant idea that I was going to do some kind of custom pergola off to the right here, and it was such a nightmare to build. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I persevered because in the end I was really happy with it. But I think the combination of having the pergola there with the curved wall or the curved kind of platform that it's on, the combination of those two things just made the game really unhappy. So I had to play around with different sizes and different connection points. And in the end, after a lot of fiddling, it all came together. One happy accident, you'll see at the top, I started off with the wood being a kind of light brown color. And then a little later on, I decided actually I'm going to change it to white. I think that would tie in a bit better. So I started clicking through and changing all the individual pieces to white. And then halfway through, I looked at it when it was kind of half light brown, half white. And I just thought that was so beautiful, the combination of the two. I would never ever have thought to create something like that intentionally, because in my head it should all be the same wood color. But I think this is just a great example of how when we break the rules, or our own rules, really, there are no rules, but when we break our own rules in The Sims, we can create something a little bit unexpected and maybe surprise ourselves. So I was really happy with how the top of this pergola looked in the end. And then you'll see my second curtain nightmare. I wanted there to be billowing curtains on the pergola because if I couldn't have them on my front window, I thought, well, I'll have them here instead. I could not, for the longest time, get that curtain on the end there close to the house. I could not get it to line up. It kept wanting to jump to the wall behind it. And I tried so many things to get it in the right place. And eventually I did manage it by building an extra wall, putting the curtain on the wall and then deleting the wall. But it took me a while to have that idea and come to that conclusion. Eventually I do get there and my need for billowing curtains was satisfied. And I did think maybe I should cut it out of the video because I did play with it for quite a while. But if you've watched my videos before, I've mentioned to you that I like to keep in at least some, if not most, of the struggle, because there are so many wonderful Sims builders out there on YouTube who have been doing it for years, and it can be really easy to feel inadequate, or at least it's easy for me to feel inadequate when I watch their builds and I think, my God, they're just so good. And I mean that with absolutely no shade at all. But for my videos, I try and keep in just a little bit of this struggle, just in case there's anyone watching who thinks maybe I'd like to make my own YouTube Sims build videos, but you know what? I'm just not that good, so I won't. I think while the process is important and exciting and fun, what really matters is where you get to in the end. I really enjoyed cluttering up this deck. I say cluttering it up. There is still a lot of space, but filling it out, I suppose, with different furniture pieces, areas where you could sit and relax and look at the ocean and read a book. And then combining that with these potted plants, it really gives it a homey vibe for such a big open space. So we've got a couple of little benches around to the left near the greenhouse. And then we've got a little eating area to the right under the custom pergola. And then we've got our lounge chairs out at the front. So there's lots of lovely areas to sit and enjoy the view here. And you can see I was actually able to find a couple of little cocktail glasses in debug. And I put those down next to the loungers to tell the story about how she would come out here and she would bring him his drink, she would have her own, and then they would spend the evening here together. And I love that they are this beautiful sea foam color. I was just like, oh, that's so perfect. That is so perfect for this spot and this story. So this house, it's not perfectly island living. It's not perfectly enchanted by nature. And that's kind of the point. It's something new and it's hers. So this is where I think the magic really started happening, when I tried combining all those dreamy, beachy elements from island living with the soft, woodland, whimsical style of Enchanted by Nature. I was a little bit worried about how I was going to do the outside of the house, because you'll see it's actually quite a big lot, and most of our house, or a lot of our house, is on the front there, hanging over the water. So I had a lot of space behind the house, which is, I suppose, technically the front of the house as you would approach it from the land. I had to really rack my brains about what I was going to do in that space. I loved the idea of doing maybe a little sculpture garden, maybe on some cobbles. It's maybe slightly unexpected for a beach location, you know, to have that kind of romantic garden vibe, but I just felt like it would be so suitable for our fairy and her personality. So I put down a little platform off to the side of the house here, make it this kind of interesting curvy shape, and cover it with cobbles, and later on you'll see it becomes this romantic outdoor retreat. I was really happy when I found those bushes with the pink flowers in debug, and I do end up putting them down quite a lot to kind of blend the romantic garden area and the deck with the house to kind of fill in the gaps and make it make sense. I raised up some of the plants around the deck, and I did that by turning on move objects and then pressing the 9 key to lift the objects up to make it look like the bush was a little bit bigger, because they kind of looked a bit small down by the deck there when you can still still see underneath. So I tried to fill in all that space there and make it look like nature was really abundant. I did end up going with a swing set, which I thought was a really fun, whimsical idea. I played around. Do I go Island Living swing set? Do I go Enchanted by Nature swing set? I don't think there was a wrong choice here. They both looked fun, but Island Living kind of looked like it had been kind of knocked together with some of the landscaping around the environment. It looked like it was built from the world, if that makes sense, rather than something that had been like bought on Amazon and shipped in or something like that. It looked like it belonged just a little bit more. So I put it down there, and I could imagine myself sitting on this swing set, happily rocking back and forth, looking at the ocean for hours. At the back, she has a fire pit. I just think this would be a lovely place to get cozy outside. Maybe play some music, maybe drink some cocoa, maybe roast some marshmallows, even have a dance perhaps or something like that. I thought long and hard about how I was going to connect these various outdoor spaces, because in a world like Willow Creek or something like that where you have grass, it's a lot easier to have maybe a little dirt path or something like that, or a little stone path, one of those kind of things. On a beach, I was like, what kind of path would we have? So I try a few different things, and then what I settle on is I use some of the rocks that we have in the outdoor landscaping, and I size them down. And this did take me quite a while. This was a labor of love, but I sized them down, and then I used them to kind of outline a little path going to all these different spaces and just tying it together, filling in some of this lot as well, because as I say, it is quite large compared to the house. And then I just used a little bit of terrain paint under the rocks just to make them feel kind of settled, like they've been there a while. And this is something that I haven't done on any of my builds before, but I think I'm probably going to do it again because I really liked how it looked. I imagine that the entrance to the lot, if there is such a thing, would be underneath this gazebo or this little pergola that we put down on the outside corner there. I suppose it doesn't really need an entrance because in my head, this whole island belongs to her. It's a private island. It's her own domain. But I think it needed an origin, somewhere to start, just so that we could have somewhere to put the mailbox that made sense. I don't know about you, but with a build like this, it can be really challenging to think where to put a really practical item like the mailbox. And I think just having the gazebo there and imagining this as kind of the entrance to her domain, I think that helped it make sense. For this little balcony area here above the greenhouse, I did use Dream Home Decorator sectionals. I love the idea of sectionals in The Sims. I think it is so good in theory, but I don't use them very often because, to be honest, I think they look a little bit uncomfortable. However, for outdoor fairy seating, they actually worked really well, and they have that nice rounded edge there that I could kind of snuggle into the rounded edge of the balcony that we created. And it all looks really intentional. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I also put down some books out here, like she's just been out here chilling and reading. I decided I did not want that top balcony. I'm pointing to it like like it's here. I did not want that balcony on the top floor to be inaccessible or just for show. I wanted it to be somewhere where the Sims could actually go and hang out. And so consequently, we needed a ladder somewhere. And I thought maybe it could go on the outside, maybe it could go inside. And what I thought would be fun is maybe I challenge myself to have it right in the middle of the room. I mean, really, that was the only space it could go logistically, just because that upstairs, that third floor, is so small. But I thought, what about if we put it here and then we use it to kind of separate the bedroom and make it into two smaller, cozier spaces? I put down this flower cart, almost like a drinks cart, because as I say, she's friendly. I imagine maybe she puts down little snacks or little drinks here so that when she has parties, people can just grab something and go. I remembered far too late into this build that I had wanted to put an outdoor shower somewhere, because I feel like that would be so perfect for a beachfront lot like this. You have a happy day playing in the sand or swimming in the ocean, and then you can rinse off before you go into the house, so you don't bring all that beach stuff into the house with you. But at this point, I just couldn't find a place for it. You see, I do try and snuggle it in behind the pergola, and it could have gone there. There was enough space for it, but I don't know if it made sense to have it right next to the outdoor dining table. So unfortunately, this house does not have an outdoor shower. It has one upstairs in the bathroom. But maybe a fairy, she can just magic away all that stuff. She doesn't actually need to shower. So perhaps we can tell ourselves that story and pretend that's why there's no outdoor shower in this house. I feel like a lot of builds that I've done recently have had really small bathrooms. I do enjoy a tucked away bathroom, and I do relish the challenge of trying to decorate them. But for this particular build, I wanted to try and create something where the bathroom was allowed to shine. So I intentionally put it on the top floor of this little flipper, and I made it larger than I typically would. And I was really glad I did, because this allowed us to have a lot of storage around the sink. It allowed us to have a shower and a bathtub and a little corner where we could tuck away the toilet as well. And I don't know about you, but I think this little pothole window here by the bathtub is so good. I just think it would be such a good time in this bathtub. You could sit here, you could relax, and you could look out this little window at beautiful Sulani. Now, unfortunately here, I did lose my last little bit of footage. Sometimes my system just, I don't know, it just all freezes up, and whatever I'm recording at the time, it's not even like a corrupted file, it's just gone. So what I'll do now is I'll just give you a tour of everything just so that you can see everything. All you really missed was the ending of the bathroom and the bedroom and that upper balcony. So this is what the house looks like from the ocean looking in, and I was so happy with this particular view, you guys. I think it looks really, really good. I love this big romantic open air platform where she can hang out. If I lived here, I think I would be spending most of my time out the front here. Around to the side here, you'll see she's created this kind of romantic sculpture garden, just something that really feels like a home away from home for her. You'll see we have a couple more places to just sit, hang out, take in the view, have some drinks. Moving inside, and I was really happy with this kind of great room, kitchen, living, diner, combined space. So we've got the living room at the front. You can sit, you can look out these nice big windows at the ocean. If it ever gets cool enough in Sulani, you can turn on the fire and get cozy. And then towards the back, we've got that lovely kitchen and the little dining nook. And then up the stairs, I know you haven't seen this yet, and I do apologize that you didn't get to see the creation of this in the video. So you'll see I put down the ladder just as we discussed, and then I kind of put some walls around it to kind of separate it and to signify. It's almost like a runway where you're going up to the next level of the house. And then I put different walls around it, kind of higgledy-piggledy, different heights to create some interest and a little intrigue. And then we flipped the bed around, put it against this back wall, or this wall that's separating off the ladder. And what that allowed us to do was put down a lovely big picture window looking out the front of the house. So when you wake up in the morning, you wake up to this beautiful, stunning beach view. So even though it might be a little unusual to have a ladder in the middle of your bedroom, I think it actually gave us an opportunity to create something quite lovely here. And then closer to the bathroom, I thought this would be a good place to have maybe more of a little dressing area. So I put down a little dresser for her so she could keep all her most essential things near to the bathroom. And then the bathroom itself, I was so happy with how this turned out. I thought it'd be a really lovely space to get ready. You'll see I kept it practical, but also feminine and soft. And then we go up the ladder again, and you'll see we've got that top balcony, and what a stunning view you get from up here. If you've enjoyed today's build and you'd like to come back again, it would mean the absolute world to me if you hit the like and subscribe button so you can find me again easily in the future. You can also find me on social media at Sims Builds Chill on both Instagram and X. I'll see you again soon.